are now in stage 5, lesson 3 of the roadmap to success in the social strategy squad. And in this lesson, we're going to be talking all about how to utilize Facebook groups to grow your business. This is an area actually where a lot of people find it to be very, very challenging because we're not really thinking about business entirely here. Okay. So as we're going through this, we're thinking about you as a person, but you also as a business owner. So remember, there's 2 pieces of you here as we're talking, right? Facebook, as with any social media platform, is not a one-way street. So it's not a situation where you make a post and other people engage, right? That sounds like I'm here, you're engaging, right? It is a relationship based. 2 people talking, engaging, relating with each other, like friends, like colleagues, like people who are, like you would engage with someone at a grocery store, just like the transaction. You're not walking up to that person saying, I'm engaging with this person. The engagement is just the way we describe the interaction that we have, right? So, because what we're really trying to do is facilitate interactions between people, whether they be us and other people or other people and each other, which is actually even better. When I was growing up, down the street from me, there was so we didn't have like a grocery store like you do here. You had a vegetable guy, you had a fruit guy, you had a milk guy, you had, basically there was this little like row of stores and each individual guy had his shop. And then there were 2 non-perishable good stores that we had called Pac Medico and Jumbo, but they're very small stores. They're not like these big stores. They're more like bodegas in New York City than actual like big grocery stores. So that was sort of how we lived growing up. And when my grandparents moved there, nobody else lived in the entire, it was just, no one lived there. There were no houses, there was no stores, there was nothing. It was just the house and that was it, right? Because it was, they moved to Pakistan right after partition and everybody was now moving to this new land, right? So they build their houses, they build their communities, and as they're building, the guy down the street has a farm and he comes in and he sells his groceries, and the other one has the meat and he sells his meat. So you're buying your goods from people that you know. You may not be best friends. You may not go to each other's houses for dinner. You may only just know their name, but you're always going to that guy for your meat. So there was a time where as the country started to get more westernized, the stores started adding these things. You get vegetables, you get this, you get that. And my grandmother was like, horrified. Why would you go to a store and pay a stranger for your vegetables when you can get them from Ali down the street and take care of his family, right? That is the mindset that I grew up with, right? Where everybody shopped from local people because you wanted to support the community. That doesn't actually change as you get older. And as we have gotten older and technology has developed and things have happened, even though we have all of this technology and we have all these great ways that you can go to the grocery store and buy things, you can go to buy things from Target, you can buy things from Amazon, we are still human beings. And at the core, we still need a community, right? We still need a community. I actually was watching Boba Fett last night and he actually said that you can only get so far on your own. At some point, you need a community around you. And we as children, and when we're younger, it's easy for us to form community because our parents will take care of forming community for us. There was no internet, and so we were all communing and gathering quite frequently. We had school communities, we had Girl Scout communities, we had soccer communities, but as an adult, it's very hard to find those communities. So it is challenging to grow your network if you're not being intentional about it because you just stay in the silos that you're in. Though times have changed and communities don't look the same, people are still looking for that same thing. People form communities with people who have things in common with and who keep in touch with each other on a semi-regular basis and show interest in each other. It's not a lot. They keep in touch on a semi-regular basis, they have things in common, and they show interest in each other. That's it. That is how you can build a community. How are your kids? How are you feeling today? That's more than enough to get that going. Now let's start with thinking about what you have in common with people, right? I want you to think about things that you are interested in now, right? Hobbies, crafts, cross-stitching, drawing, gardening, cooking, whatever it is that you're interested in. You can also think about causes that are important to you. For me, it's racial issues, cannabis use for women after 40, women over 40 sex, chronic illness, LGBTQ issues, mental health. Those are things that are very, very important to me, okay? For me, I want to find groups that are related to these topics. So I'm going to search on Facebook, I'm going to look on Google, and I'm going to go down the rabbit hole, right? Just looking for groups about this particular topic that I am interested in. And I'm really just collecting the information. Now, I could also look for business-related niche groups, right? So, for example, there's the Boutique Hub for boutique owners, the Support Squad for VAs, you've got photo organizer groups, you've got coaching groups. There's a lot of specialty niche groups for people who are in one particular business type, right? Which is great. Email groups, that kind of thing. And you really want to be in that kind of space because now you are finding there's people who are experiencing the exact same problems that you are. They are in your industry, and it's very helpful to have that as a place to connect. There's also local and community pages. We had an All About Franklin page. We have an All About Plymouth page. There's a page for our local association. So little community groups that pop up around you. There's groups for your homeschooling. There might be groups for your local school. There might be groups for, the town garden fair, whatever, right? The local community type groups, but they exist on Facebook as well, okay? These are the different types of groups that exist online where people go to gather and they hang out and they talk about things that they have in common. The purpose in these groups is not for you to go and find places to sell. Okay, we're not looking here to say, okay, I'm going to go in these groups and how am I going to be able to sell to these people? This is you going into these groups so that you can cultivate relationships and plant those seeds. We are taking a step back from looking for an immediate result from every action, because that unfortunately is how you get stuck in not having a successful business, because the things that build long-term success rarely give you immediate results to where you look at them and you feel, oh yeah, I did this thing, it's giving me the results that I want, so I'm going to keep doing it. Unfortunately, the things that actually create long-term success and freedom require some legwork initially that you put into it to help make it viable. And it doesn't usually give you the return that you're looking for immediately. And so if you're trying to connect immediate sale to immediate activity, that is not going to happen. And it's rarely going to happen in your business, because you are doing a lot of different things in your business that are all together collectively creating sales. Now, when you're in a space in your business where you want to look at metrics and you want to get really, really detailed about like exactly what's working and how, I recommend doing that at a later date. I don't really work in that space, because for me, the way that I do it is you see the results in the money that starts coming to you and in the relationships that start being built. So that's really what you want to be focusing on, is being consistent in your activities, and not on, I talk to this person, how do I get this person to buy from me? Because that's not, you're never going to get the sales that way. The sales will come, but they come as part of a process. Okay. So the first thing is that you need to do the research and find these groups. Okay. So you want to keep a journal open by you, and, or like on your computer, however you do it is fine. And you want to Google, you want to go to Facebook, you want to do research, you want to go down the rabbit hole. You'll click here, click there. You'll find groups. Anytime you find something on Google, check to see if they have a group on Facebook. What you're really trying to do here is just sort of expand your horizons. Ask your friends, ask your community members, do you know of any good groups that are for crafting? A lot of us are already members of these groups. You don't have to do all the hard work on your own. Ask on your personal profile, hey, I'm looking for some cool groups on crafting. Does anyone have any ideas? That in and of itself is going to create a conversation on your page, because that's a conversation starter, right? So right there, you're getting people to help you out. So you don't have to do this all on your own. You don't have to do it hidden behind a computer, but you are going to need to do some of it on the computer, Googling, searching, and whatnot, okay? What you're really trying to do is get a list of as many as you can, the good, bad, the ugly, it doesn't really matter, but you're just trying to get a really big list of groups and organizations for one particular topic. So you're not going to sit down and go, I'm going to look for groups on all these topics. You're going to sit down and say, okay, I said, okay, I want to sit down and I really want to figure out, I want to find groups that I can be a part of that normalize cannabis use for women over 40, right? So that was the one that I worked on. And I looked everywhere and I found a whole bunch of things, and I found these, magazines and articles and whatnot. And then I asked a couple of my friends who I know work in the industry, and they were like, oh yeah. So they introduced me to like 13 different groups. So I ended up having a very, very long list. So that's my first step. I have this very long list. Now, I can't engage in 14, 20 groups. I can't engage in all that. So like, I'm not going to be able to do all the things with this group, but this is my beginning list that I'm going to be working with. Okay. Once I found that list, I put it aside. I'm done for right now. That's all. That's the only activity I needed to do for that day. The next day, after I've had a chance to sleep, come back, marinate on what I've learned. And this is really important. You will not get better results by just pushing forward into the next step immediately. You need to give yourself some time to marinate on what you've learned, even on a subconscious level, because there's a lot of things that you see that go in here that you may not consciously acknowledge, that you'll marinate, sleep on, and it will all congeal overnight. And then the next day you wake up and you're like, okay, now I have a better vision, right? So the next day you come in and now you're going to actually, you're gonna cull it a little bit. Now, as you're gathering your groups, I just want to remind you that for some of these ideas, you may be able to find a lot. You may be able to find a ton of groups. For others, you may only be able to find one or two, and you might be feeling disheartened. That's okay. You can definitely come into the squad, ask about finding niche groups. We have these conversations. We can do a live. We can talk about it in office hours. There's a lot of different ways for you to get to those niche groups, and some of them may only have one or two, and that's okay. what happens is that the more you just keep it on your radar that you're looking for these things, and you follow people on Instagram. We'll talk a little bit about how you can find other groups if you're not able to find something on Facebook. But what you're ultimately doing is just planting other seeds that will ultimately bear fruit. So I wasn't able to find any groups for biracial kids, right? I'm not a kid anymore, but I wasn't able to find that. But now, after having spent the last 3 months in therapy, I've been talking about my race a lot more. Eventually I found this group, and I found this website the website is multiracial. I'll actually put the link in here. And it's just this aggregate of all articles that have been written about by people who are biracial or multiracial. And that for me is enough. I just have it on my to-do list to go once every other week, once every other day, and look at what's posted on there, and I read 1 or 2 articles, and usually that'll send me to something else, and then eventually I find a group here, or I find something there, and over time your network builds. So you don't have to, this beginning piece is not the be all end all that's going to decide what happens. It's just your opening salvo that will then slowly start to grow over time. So you're just planting like the one seed, okay? But always come to the squad if you need help. So now you've slept on it. The next day, you will research the groups, okay? So in your research, you will cull some of them. You're going to go online, you're going to research them, you're going to find out that a group hasn't been active in a really long time, okay? Or that, what you're really looking for is you're looking to make sure that it has some posts recently. It doesn't have to be a very big group, like, 2,000 or 3,000 is fine. Even a couple hundred is fine, but it does need to be active. Someone needs to be posting, someone other than the group leader, okay? So like if the group leader is the only one posting in there, and we're going to come back to that again, it's not a viable group. I think that, anything less than a few thousand you're going to have trouble with, but there are going to be smaller groups of a couple hundred where that's very, very active. So I wouldn't dismiss it just because of the numbers. Then you want to join 3 of them. Okay. So join 3 groups, and you're going to put on your calendar to visit each of those groups every couple of days for 2 weeks. Okay. So I have 3 that I visit. I put 1 on Monday, 1 on Wednesday, 1 on Thursday. That's it. Okay. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to visit it. Okay. So those are my 3 groups, and now I'm done. Okay. So that's for my one list of cannabis use for women over 40. I have these 3 groups. They're on my list. So I go to look at them every other day. Now, as I go to look at them, and again, like I said, one group is on one day, one group is on the other day. You only really need to engage in them once a week or twice a week, depending on how active they are. You do not need to spend your whole life in them. Here are some critical questions for you to ask yourself about these groups. When you're in them, do people talk about things that you find interesting? Okay. Was there a single post that you stopped on and you were like, oh yeah, I get this, or I want to say something about it? Like, was there anything interesting? Did you find any of the content helpful? Like, you're like, oh, okay, I can try this out. I like this idea. Was any of it helpful to you? If the group is particularly active, you can do a search for the words help or advice and see if there's anybody there that you can help. If you just put help and advice, just see what people are asking for help for and see what you can help on, right? I wouldn't recommend going further back than like 2 or 3 weeks to help somebody. But like if you happen to come, a new person is usually going to be searching a group, so people aren't going to be too worried about that. If the only person, again, I want to say this again, if the only person making posts is the group owner, okay, then leave. That's not a group that's going to work for you, okay, because that's not a viable group. You will leave a lot more groups than you stay in. You'll probably join 12, leave 11, okay? You may leave all 12, but so you're not trying to like there's no winning here by finding and staying in the group. The win is if you find a group that you connect with, right? Simply being in the group isn't like, it doesn't matter. You have to find a group that you connect with, right? Your goal is not to get in a lot of groups, but to find the ones that are good fits for you, okay? Now, over time, this will change. Like, again, like in this group, you may comment on something, someone talks to something, they give you an idea, you find another group, and that group turns out to be better for you than this group, so you leave this group. The key is that as long as you've started the engine of doing this activity, you will already be on the path that you need to be on as long as you're going consistently and engaging in those groups every other day. This will not work if you just join the groups and sit there, okay? So now you want to go through this in cycles, because we just talked earlier on, we talked about how you have, business groups, you have niche groups, you have hobby groups, you have cause groups. There's so many different types of groups you can join that you're going to do this research. Like, you're going to do the research, you're going to sleep on it. Next day, you're going to join them. Then you're going to put them on your to-do list, right? Done. Then the day after that, you're going to be like, okay, now I'm going to do this for the next topic. I'm going to go searching. And then you can stop if you're like exhausted. You're like, I need a break. I'm only going to do it once a week. That's fine. So now what you're doing is you're building your group strategy, okay? Because every time you do this, you're adding a couple more groups to your list. So by the time you're done, you'll probably have 2 to 3 groups for 3 or 4 different types of things. Over time, that will probably cull down to a handful of groups. You might have 3 or 4 that you engage in total across everything, right? And that's fine. That's really the direction you're going to end up in, is you're really just looking for a few groups that you engage in regularly that are now your communities. People know who you are. They know what you're doing. They're like, oh, hey, what's happening? I've seen you before. I know. So that's really what you're doing, is building yourself in those spaces. Those people get to know you. They leave groups, go to other places. They take that information with them. Okay. So that's really going to help you enormously in terms of planting those seeds. Okay. Once you have all these groups, your next steps are to put them on your calendar to engage in each one of them at least once a week. Okay. So I engage in about 5 or 6 groups. I have one listed a day. So each day I go and show up a bit. That's it. Okay. I respond, I help somebody, I comment on something that I find funny. There is another training that's at the end, how to provide value. And so we're going to do that as a whole section of its own, because it is a different conversation. But for right now, the key thing is for you to make sure that you're getting these things on your schedule, because what you really don't want to do is think of it as something that you have to do. What you want to do is put it into your schedule so it becomes part of a thing, your routine every day, and you don't really have to think about it. Okay. The last thing that I want to leave you with is that when you're in these groups, don't leave before you've had the opportunity to ask yourself those critical questions. Spend some time thinking about it, because now that you know what your actual goal is, you can afford to be a little bit thoughtful. Take your time on it. Don't worry about making a mistake. Okay, this is also really important. Do not worry about leaving a group that you're like, oh my God, what if this is the group? Don't worry. If it's the group in your searches, it will come back. As there's groups that are like the groups, that if they are the groups, then everybody's in them, which means that they will keep popping up as a group that you need to join. And you'll be like, you know what? I maybe want to give that group a second chance. That's totally okay. Do not worry about making a mistake. Do not worry about saying, oh my goodness, what if I pick the wrong group? Because the way that this entire system is set up is that you can make those mistakes, and it won't hurt your business at all, because you have so many other things in the irons in the fire and other things that you're doing that they will compensate for any mistakes you make. For many business owners, the struggle that we have is we don't realize, or we don't have a system that allows, like a raft system that allows us to make mistakes, because the rest of the raft will compensate for any holes in it. So now that you know you have that, you can feel more comfortable slowing down and taking these steps more intentionally based off of what you want, because you know that the mistakes that you make will only be steps towards whatever it is that you're doing next. Now, your homework is to download the handout for this particular training, where it is your Facebook group worksheet. And I want you to start going through, just pick one of your topics and start going through the research topic, and share that information on the squad so that we can all participate with you. Because don't forget, the squad is a great crowdsourcing space. So if you say, today I'm going to be looking for groups on boutiques, you will have a lot of people who share groups that they're a part of, and that will really, really, really help your research. That's a huge shortcut, because they've already done a lot of this work. So they might be able to give you some short lists so you can bypass some of the research process.